want to get to why we are here, and that is Steffani. She has so much experience, and I think you will notice a certain delight in it. And I think we need her on stage. What do you think? Should we have her on stage?
Thanks so much. I am glad to be here, and thanks for all of you, and glad for the Eastmans for hosting this. So I thought I'd start by taking you back to Saturday morning. When Saturday morning came, my sisters and I would wake up so early, so very early in the morning, tiptoe out across the linoleum into the living room. And there it was. The box. The big box. This was well before TVs had shrunken down to flat screen. No, this was a 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot box. A TV in the 80s. We would wander up and switch on flip on the switch, and there was this tiny little glowing screen where we hoped we would hear these words. Gathered together from the farthest reaches of the cosmos are the most powerful superheroes that mankind has ever seen. Here in this great hall of justice, Wonder Woman, Supergirl, Batman and Robin, Aquaman, and the Wonder Twins, Zan and Gina, with their space monkey leap. This was our favorite Saturday morning cartoon, the Super Friends. Oh, it fueled our playtime. For all of those many years, we imagined ourselves jumping over buildings in a single bound and being like the Super Friends, making peace and justice for all mankind. We were making the world a better place. We loved it. Well, one day in between a double episode of Super Friends, a commercial came on that got our attention immediately because Wonder Woman jumped onto the screen saying, "Great Minerva, it's something new." Supergirl flew in from the other side and said, "It's something new in underwear." And then a little girl wearing a white tank top and white little panties started spinning around and around and around. And as she spun, her underwear changed from plain old boring white to be printed like Wonder Woman's super suit. Then she called out, "Underoos!" And then they began to sing. Wearing underoos is fun, and you can have more than one. There's Veronica and Josie too. Wonder Woman, Supergirl, which one are you? Underoos are fun to wear. Yeah, something super new in underwear. Na 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 na. Oh. Oh. I mean, we always believed we were superheroes inside, but seriously, the underwear would make it so. We had to have it. We had to. We looked and told our mom all about underoos, and amazingly, we got it for Christmas. We put on our I was Supergirl. My sister was Wonder Woman. Then we put on our ordinary clothes. But we knew, just like the kids on the TV, that we were actually superheroes. We could do anything. We weren't just skinny little girls of divorced parents. We were going to make peace happen. Well, sometime we grew out of or playing superheroes. But I don't think either my sister or I ever did grow out of wanting to make the world a better place. My sister, with the Wonder Woman underoos, became the CEO of a cybersecurity company, protecting the world from evil hackers and no good web doers. And I did not. I became, on most days, a mediocre mom. The only thing I really protected the world from was toddler tantrums. You know, it's funny though, because in motherhood, I have had many moments that were almost like superhero moments. Almost. Like there was one time when my preschooler understood how to get into the bathroom stall and lock it, but couldn't figure out how to unlock it. So instead of leaping over a tall building, I climbed over the bathroom stall, very carefully putting both feet on the toilet as I came down to unlock the door. Instead of chasing bad guys, well, there was this one time that I was running a little bit late from picking up the other two kids, and my son with special needs was on the school bus, and I turned the corner and saw the school bus leaving my house where they were going to drop him off, only I wasn't there. I said, "Hang on to your seatbelts, kids!" And I started following that school bus around the neighborhood, through many streets, and finally, I know this is weird, but I finally flagged down the school bus in a funeral home parking lot. I walked up sheepishly and said, "Hey, I'm here to pick up Greg." I may not have taken punches from evil villains, but I did take a punch right in the nose from my 5-year-old when I made the mistake of coming up to him and saying, What's the matter, Mr. Grumpy Pants?" Yeah, it was on an ordinary Tuesday that this happened. My daughter, Abby, and her best friend at the time came into the living room, and they were so thrilled. They had an idea. I could tell they had an idea of something they wanted to do. And my daughter said, "Mommy, can we make cookies?" And I was like, I am right in the middle of doing something. And I don't want to stop being right in the middle of doing something to supervise 7-year-olds making cookies. Oh, she must have seen my face because she whipped out from behind her back. "Look, Mom, I've got a cookie mix. I've got this. We can do it all by ourselves." Okay, well, come on, Mom, we've made cookies hundreds of times. And that was actually probably true. It was her favorite thing to do, was make cookies. I said, "All right, but remember oven safety." "Yep, 2 minutes. I got it, Mom, no problem." And she went back into the kitchen with her friend. And I tuned in to the sound of clinking, measuring cups and giggling girls. Well, sometime later, Abby came out with 2 giant oven mitts holding a tray. She was on the verge of tears. She said, "I don't know what I did, but these don't look like cookies." She wasn't wrong. I looked at the tray and what I can only describe as a giant cookie blob. It seems that she had taken those sugar cookies and rolled them out and cut them into rainbows and bunnies and butterflies. But instead of putting them far enough away from each other that they wouldn't collide, she put every single cookie on the tray at one time. They had raised up and congealed together in a giant cookie blob mess. She looked at me, not knowing what to do. And I knew I had to do something. Because the first time I made cookies by myself, I was 12. It was a talent show that I was participating in, and my family had always baked for as many years as I could remember. My grandpa, he was an actual baker. He had his own bakery. So I knew that somehow I was going to be great at baking, even though I had never actually tried to bake anything. I convinced my mom to turn over her whole kitchen to me. And I pulled out my family's recipe for 10 dozen oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. We do nothing small at our house because, no 3 dozen recipe or 1.5 dozen, no, 10 dozen oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. We were kind of famous for it. Everyone craved my mom's cookies within a 1-mile radius of our home. And I couldn't wait because I had always secretly felt that my mom did not add enough chocolate chips. And now that it was up to me, there would be an abundance of chocolate chips in these cookies. I began mixing and stirring and gathering up the ingredients with visions of cookie stardom dancing in my head. Move over, Mrs. Fields, because here I come. Well, I got the first tray of cookies in the oven and pulled them out. And these cookies were perfection. Truly, the crispy brown edges, the kind that you pull off the tray, and when you break it in half, it makes a little chocolate smile. Oh, they looked so good. My mom came in and said, "Oh, the first batch is out of the oven. Have you tried one yet?" I said, "No, I haven't," because we had pretty strict rules about not trying cookie dough. So I took that cookie, and I was going to take a dainty little princess bite, but it smelled so good. I shoved the whole cookie in my mouth, waiting for the ecstasy of the best cookie I'd ever eaten. But instead, I ran to the sink and, well, tossed my cookies. I was 12 and had a flair for drama. I fell to the ground. I ruined 10 dozen oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. My mom said, "You're just being dramatic. It can't be that bad." She took a cookie off the tray and she took a bite of the cookie with a very similar reaction. She said, "How much salt and baking soda did you put in these cookies?" I said, 2 teas, just like the recipe said. 2 teas. She said, "Were those big teas or little teas?" Little teas. "Did you use the tablespoon or the teaspoon?" "Oh, I used the tablespoon. I ruined 10 dozen oatmeal chocolate chip cookies." "Call your grandpa." I can't call my grandpa. He's a baker. People like me should know better than that. "Just call him." I finally got on the phone with my grandpa. And underneath his simple white baking uniform was a superhero. using his knowledge of culinary creating and some quick math skills, he did some calculations. He came back on the phone and he said, Shotsley, you did not ruin 10 dozen oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. I said, I didn't. He said, no, you just started a batch of 80 dozen oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. That's amazing. He said all I needed to do was take the remaining dough and split it up into 8 different sections and then make the recipe all over again 8 different times, and don't add any baking soda or salt into the dough, and they would all taste fabulous. And he was right. All 960 cookies tasted amazing. We had so many cookies. We were visiting neighbors here. Have some cookies. Have some more cookies. Oh, did you like them? We have 832 more at home. Come on over. There were so many cookies, but they all tasted fantastic because of my grandpa. I knew I couldn't change the recipe, and I couldn't change what was going on Abby's tray, but I had to do something. I had to. And so I thought hard, and it came to me. My chance to be a superhero. I said, Abby, you have made the world's first cookie puzzle. She said, oh, I love puzzles. I said, I know. We just cut in between, and then you can take it apart and put it back together. And the only thing that would make this puzzle even better is, she stopped me before I could even say it, frosting! That's right, honey. We have never had so much fun taking apart and putting back together and eating a puzzle before in our lives. Then or since, turns out. The funny thing is that my daughter Abby grew up to become a chef. So you just never know. We all walk around in ordinary clothes, but there might be a moment that comes that you can be a superhero. Since the time Martha was a little girl, she knew her mama was filled with music. She could see it in the way her mama walked, her hips going back and forth like a bell. She could hear it in the rhythm her mama peeled potatoes to. She could see it like color all around their log cabin, like wallpaper. She loved her mama's music, but her favorite time with her mama was at night, when all of the other little ones were in bed and her mama would come and sing to just her. She'd hold her hand or tussle her hair, and then she would sing. In the dark of the night, let my song shine bright till the morning. Till the morning, like a blanket you found, may my song wrap around, keeping you warm till the morning, till the morning. One day you will ride with my song by your side, learning music to play. In the morning, Martha would look up at her mama and say, "I am going to keep Papa's promise." "I know you will. I know it." You see, Martha's mama or Papa had made a promise to his mom or to her mama. Robert is his name and Mandy is her name. And they met in Ontario, Canada, back in the 1860s. Robert was there taking care of some legal affairs for his father. And at one of the places that he stayed, it was customary at the time to hand out a little tin-type photograph book. And he was looking through the pictures when he came across a photo of a young woman who he thought he could fancy very much. His very words. He wanted to meet her and had heard that there was going to be a party later on in that weekend, but he was bashful and wasn't sure if he really wanted to show up at the party, because if he actually met her, he might be caught not knowing what to say. He was finally convinced to go, but stayed in the kitchen for most of the night. That is until Mandy burst through the door and the whole room exploded. "Mandy's here! Mandy's here!" Well, Mandy was the life of the party. She danced. She always had a game, and someone began to play the piano, and Mandy sang and pulled Robert right out of the kitchen. He watched her in awe, her beautiful voice filling the space, and he knew he was in love. She introduced herself afterwards. She might have noticed him staring at her while she sang. That night, he went home determined to find a way to court her. Weeks went by, and he noticed that Mandy kept showing up at a well. And he decided that he would keep showing up at that well as well, in hopes that maybe they would both be there together at some point. And that day finally came. He was watering the horses, and he could see her in the distance coming toward the well with her sister. He quickly arranged for people to take care of what he was doing so that he could be there alone. And then when she arrived at the well, her sister made up a quick excuse about how she had to leave right away. Robert and Mandy were at the well alone together. Imagine Mandy's surprise when Robert blurted out, "Mandy, I'm smitten on you. Is there any chance for someone like me?" Exact quotes. And then imagine his surprise when she confided in him that she had broken off an engagement the very night of the party after she met him, because it was, as she put it, love at first sight. They were married a week later. Yep. Well, they had a little log cabin together, and they had their first baby, Martha. And finally, all of the legal affairs were taken care of, and Robert was feeling the pull to go back west to Mendon, Utah, a place that he had just begun to start establishing before he left to take care of the legal affairs. Mandy did not want to go. Not at all. She did not want to leave her family. She did not want to leave her way of life. And she did not want to leave the piano, because whenever someone played, she could sing, and it just made her so happy. But she loved Robert more. So she followed him, singing all the way. Her home brightened their space, or her song brightened their space just as it had before. But it turns out that frontier work is backbreaking and kind of draining. And after some time, Mandy just wasn't singing as frequently as she had been. Little by little, that song slipped right out of her. And one day, instead of Mandy's voice when he came home, it was silent. Robert knew he had to do something. And so he devised a plan. He called her over and said, "Mandy, I know how much you sacrificed to come here out west with me, to build our home and family here. I know how much you loved your youth in Ontario. And so I'm going to make you a promise. I'm going to make you a promise that when little Martha is old enough to ride a horse, I will teach her. And she will ride to Wellsville, the next town over, because they actually have a piano, unlike Mendon. And she'll take piano lessons. And when she is proficient at playing piano, we will put a piano on this wall." And he pointed to an empty wall in their little cabin. Wellsville is 7 miles away. That would take 3 miles or 3 hours round trip. Yeah. And you're worth it. We will keep this promise to you. Oh, that was enough. That empty wall and the promise of music to come was enough to bring that song right back in to her heart. Martha was excited to make this promise come true. Now, there were those in the community who did not necessarily agree with what they were doing, because little Martha was out with her father helping with the horses and getting accustomed to them instead of in with her mother. Can you believe Martha is out with the horses? That is men's work. I know. They say that she's going to go 7 miles to Wellsville. Oh, I can't believe that. All for piano lessons? They have things to take care of, babies to take care of. But Mandy and Robert paid them no mind. And Martha continued to help with the horses. She loved staring into their brown eyes and brushing out their mane, waiting for the day that she would get to ride the horse. Well, one day she was out with her papa, and her papa was showing her how he could clean out the horseshoes with a horseshoe pick. And he slipped and hit the horse's leg. That horse kicked him, and he went 3 feet or more and landed on his back and didn't move. Martha called out, "Papa, Papa, are you all right, Papa?" But he didn't answer. She ran to the house to get her mother, and they went out together. And by the time they got back out, her papa was standing up, smiling, holding his chest. It's all right, nothing to fuss about. The horse just kicked the wind out of me." But to Martha, there was something to fuss about. She didn't know that horses could hurt people. The next day, when she was supposed to be helping, she stayed a far distance. She wouldn't look at the horses. She wouldn't look at her papa. And finally, he came over to her and said, "Martha, what seems to be the trouble?" "I can't do it. I can't keep your promise to Mama. I can't do it." "Oh, sweetheart, of course you can. You are perfectly capable. I can't do it. The horse. Papa, I thought the horse killed you yesterday." "Oh, but it didn't." "But what if it kills me?" "It won't. I will show you everything you need to know about that horse, and especially how to not be afraid. Martha continued to grow, and the first time she mounted that horse, she was so small and her legs went so wide that her skirts began to bunch up around her thighs. But finally the day came. The first time her papa rode with her to Wellsville and took care of some errands while Martha went in with Mrs. Sammy Mitten to take piano lessons. When she came out, her papa looked at her and said, "So, did you like the piano?" "I love the piano. I can't wait until we have a piano at our house for Mama." And then she made that ride back and forth, learning piano and coming back home. She was an exemplary student. She did everything in her lesson that her teacher told her to do. And so Mrs. Sammy Mitten couldn't figure out why she wasn't making any progress. "Martha, have you been practicing at home?" "No." "I won't continue to teach you piano lessons unless you practice at home." Martha went home that night crying. How could she practice at home? There wasn't a piano anywhere. The next week, she took a piece of paper and she drew out the piano keys just how they looked on Sammy Mitten's piano. And then she took it home and whispered to her papa, "Papa, she won't keep teaching me piano lessons unless I practice at home. I drew out the keys. Can you make this on a board that I can practice on?" Yes, he could, and did. And so Martha would come home and she would place her fingers on the very keys that her piano teacher showed her how to place them. But with no music coming out of the board, piano was still really difficult. She would find herself going to piano lessons hoping that she would do it right. Her piano teacher looked at her again and said, "Martha, I can tell you are not practicing." "But I am practicing. I'm practicing every day." "I practice every day on the board that my papa made for me. We drew out the keys of the piano." "You don't have a piano?" "Well, no, I'm taking piano lessons, and when I'm proficient, then my papa will sell the horse and buy a piano and bring it back to our house." "Oh." "Well, let's see how we can help you. Do you know any songs?" "Oh yes, I know a lot of songs. My mama sings all the time." And so her piano teacher began to choose music that Martha already knew. Her papa dragged in the board inside, and at night she and her mama, Mandy, would gather together and she would place her fingers and sing the songs. "Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream." Or, "Oh, when the saints go marching in." They made the music for their makeshift piano. And Martha did gain proficiency, enough that her papa did sell the horse. And they bought the first piano in Mendon, Utah. Mandy was so excited that she invited the entire community to come and see the piano. Martha would play and they would sing, and the entire community came and enjoyed themselves so very much. In fact, the Sweeten home ended up being the gathering place for all of the youth especially. They would sing and they would dance, and when the summer months came, they would hang the lanterns from the trees and sing well into the night, prompting one of their neighbors, Mr. Fred Larson, to say, and I quote, "The Sweetens are noisy as hell at night and damned quiet in the morning." All because of a promise, a piano, and an extraordinary little girl named Martha Emma Sweeten, my great-great-grandmother. So I grew up without books. I know this is probably a surprise, but you see, my grandparents, they immigrated from Switzerland 4 years after World War II. They came with a baby on the hip and a baby on the way, a single trunk, and $200. They spoke Swiss German, which to the untrained ear just sounds like German. They were not safe to speak their language. My grandma, she tried to learn English by listening to old-time radio shows and reading Good Housekeeping magazines. And my grandpa, he learned to speak English from his co-workers, mostly swear words. They were still busy trying to learn the language. They couldn't read it to their children. That's not something that they could do at that time. And my mom, she found herself a single mom with a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old. She did the hard work of keeping us fed and making sure that she could go back to school, and didn't have time to read to us. Then there was the fact that my eyes crossed when I was a kid, and it made tracking words on the page really difficult. I understood everything I read, but reading was all labor and absolutely no love. It was a hard and arduous task for me. So I didn't fall in love with books or stories until my 9th grade English teacher, Mrs. Jenkins. Mrs. Jenkins was really cool, which was important to 9th graders. But beyond being cool, she had this sophistication about her that I was instantly drawn to. Mrs. Jenkins talked about books like they were old friends. What? Mrs. Jenkins loved English. I didn't even know that was possible. I was in honors English because I worked hard, not because I loved English. Oh, she was amazing. And one of our very first units, she pulled out Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, and she began to read it aloud to us. And Mrs. Jenkins' voice, it sounded like rich, dark chocolate. And it felt so sweet on my ears. I just never wanted it to stop. I knew I couldn't be fully me until I could read Shakespeare like Mrs. Jenkins. I took my little well-worn copy of Romeo and Juliet home, and I opened it up, expecting the brilliant light and the sweetness to come out of the book just like it did with Mrs. Jenkins. But it didn't. It sounded like a robot. Oh, it was terrible. I continued to keep trying. I wanted so desperately to read this book just like she did, and I would stumble over commas like they were cracks in the sidewalk, and I stubbed my toe every time. I would stumble over the placement of words, but soft. What? Light through yonder window breaks. You're not even supposed to start a sentence with but. How is this? And light doesn't break a window? A baseball? Yes. Light? Not so much. I couldn't understand it. I desperately wanted to understand it, but I couldn't. After weeks and weeks of joylessly decoding Shakespeare, something happened. I want to recreate the moment for you, just like it happened. I'm 14, okay? And I am flopped on my bed on my tummy. To the left is the wall with my posters of Tom Cruise and Matthew Broderick. To the right is the floor, which you actually cannot see because of all of the great big shirts with shoulder pads and brightly colored stirrup pants. My long hair was permed and my boofy bangs were kind of pushed to the side so that I could read. My well-worn copy of Romeo and Juliet had black tear stains on it because I had not yet discovered waterproof mascara. I have to do this. I have to do this. I flipped on my clock radio. I turned it to my favorite station, the Orem High School All Beatles all the time. I grew up in the 80s, but I loved the Beatles and the 60s. And a song came on. I love this song!
Blackbird singing in the dead of night.
Take these sunken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. I listened to the music, and then my mom interrupted. You're not gonna get any homework done listening to music. I turned the music down, but not off. It makes perfect sense when you can't make sense of anything to multitask. And somehow I'm reading Romeo and Juliet and I'm listening to the Beatles and Shakespeare came out of my mouth like this. But soft what light through yonder window breaks. It is the east and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon that was already sick and pale with grief. And suddenly, I saw it. I understood it. This was so romantic! Juliet was like the sun, and she was rising like the sun, and Romeo was looking at the window as Juliet approached, and it was like the sun coming through the window, and Romeo had it bad for Juliet. This was amazing. The next day I went to English and Mrs. Jenkins began to read and I could see it. I could see Romeo looking at those stony walls that kept his love out. And I could feel the lightness of love that would lift him over those walls. That Romeo would do anything to make Juliet his bride. This was passionate. I lost it. This is passionate. infatuation. I was very familiar with passionate infatuation. I was 14. I had crushes on 12 different boys, and it was only Tuesday. And I had a new crush too. Romeo. Wow. This was the most amazing thing. I went home that very night and I pulled open my copy of Romeo and Juliet and I flipped on the radio and another song came on. The brightness of her cheek doth shame the stars as daylight doth the lamp. Her eyes in heaven knoweth through the airy regions stream, so bright that the birds would sing and think it were not night. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I wore a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek. She speaks, so speak again, bright angel, for thou you're asking me, will my love grow? I don't know, I don't know. You stick around now, it will show. I don't know, I don't know. Sweet, so would I, yet I should kill thee with much cherishing. Good night, parting is such sweet sorrow, that I shall say good night till it be morrow. I loved Shakespeare. Loved it. You may think it was the Beatles, and I did get by with a little help from my friends. I had to. I'm sorry. But the real inciting incident here was a teacher who showed me what I could be by being it. But I never would have had the strength to climb those stony walls that kept me out without the people who came before me, my ancestors that lived inside of me and made me strong enough to find the love that would lift me lightly over that wall. I could read Shakespeare now. I could read anything. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. But here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Little darling could ever hear by tale or history. Little darling, the course of love never did run smooth. But here comes the sun, here comes the sun, and I say, it's all right. I started out with Saturday morning, and now I'm going to end with bedtime. I'm in the room with my 3 youngest. The lights are out, and the night light is shining like the light at the end of the tunnel after a very long day of parenting. Almost there, almost there, almost there. And that's when it starts. Mommy, 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 I want a drink. Can I have a drink? Can I have a drink, please? Yes, I bring back a drink. But I wanted milk. Oh, of course. I'll go get you some milk, just so long as you go to bed right after this, okay? But I wanted a yellow cup. That one's pink. I can't drink with pink. Of course, a yellow cup. We can do this. It's going to be fine. And then the next child starts in. Mommy, I have to go to the bathroom. Oh, they know that anytime they say that, I have to say, okay. So he goes down and uses the bathroom, and that's when the third child chimes in, Mommy, 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 I need a snack. Of course you do. Okay, I'll get you a snack. It's all right. It's all right. They all come back, and I'm like, okay. We just have our bedtime routine and we'll be done and it will be great. And that's when it devolves into from mommy, 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 mommy to mom, 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 mom. Mom, 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 mom. It's okay. We got this. I want to leave them with like, oh, the so good feeling of love for a whole 8 hours. It's gonna be fine. I got this. I got this. And then I ask the dreaded question. Did you guys brush your teeth? Children are never interested in brushing their teeth until 15 minutes after bedtime. It's true. They all went downstairs and then I had to gather them back up again, and I thought of my husband's words that were so profound. He said it is one of the greatest ironies of life that those who are the most tired have to get those who are the least interested in going to bed to sleep every night. Yes, yes, it is so true. Well, we have our little bedtime routine. They can choose special kisses, a bright and beautiful and brave story, or a song. They have 2 choices in 3 seconds because it's been over 12 hours and I don't know how much longer I can make it. Isaac chooses a special kiss. Special kisses actually started with Joey because when he was 6, he decided that he was too big for goodnight kisses. And I thought that was ridiculous. And so I said, well, that's because you've never had a special kiss. And he said, what's a special kiss? And I said, it's really cool. Because I was still making it up. Said, it's any kind of kiss you want. He said, like a spider kiss? Exactly like a spider kiss. That's exactly right. So I took my hand and I ran it over his arm like a little spider and up across his forehead. And he said, oh, these are cool. And that began our special kisses routine. We've logged well over 150 special kisses by now. We have giraffe kisses and robot kisses and metamorphosis kisses. It's true. It took my 2-year-old about 9 months before he could actually say metamorphosis, but it was his favorite kiss and he asked for it every single night. I was like, education at bedtime, we're good. This is so great. Well, that night Isaac asked for a shark kiss. Oh, I got this one, no problem. Isaac sleeps on the top bunk, which makes shark kisses ever so much easier. I put a dorsal fin on my head and I begin at the back of his bed. Na 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 na. And then I kiss him on the forehead. And he loves it. It's the best. And then he asked for a bright and beautiful and brave story. Bright and beautiful and brave stories actually came about because of Isaac. The one who is the one that I look forward to the most going to bed at night. Bright, beautiful, and brave kisses are actually more for me than, or not kisses, stories are more for me than they are for my children. Though, well, you'll see why. I start out by saying, there once was a bright, beautiful, and brave boy named Isaac. And then my job is to scan through the day, thinking of any really story-worthy moments to put in his bright, beautiful, and brave story. I have to skip over the times that he threw temper tantrums or because I asked him to put away his backpack, or the time that he screamed, "I hate you, Mommy!" because I asked him to do his part in the dishwasher. I have to skip over the many sibling fights during the day, and then the snubbing of all of the dinner at night, and finally, it comes. After the temper tantrum, he did actually put away the silverware. So I say, and one day, his mommy asked him to put away the silverware in the dishwasher. And he opened up the dishwasher and it looked like there were 5,682 pieces of silverware. He didn't think he could do it. But he picked up one spoon and then he matched it in the drawer to the other spoon. And then he grabbed a fork and matched it in the drawer to the other fork. He was gaining momentum. He continued to put every single piece of silverware into the drawer. And it felt like a miracle. But I suppose you're not surprised, because that's just the kind of boy he is. Bright, beautiful, and brave. Then I repeat this whole process with his two younger siblings. And finally, I'm making my way out of the room with the possibility of 8 whole hours without parenting. Maybe. I'm walking, and Isaac says, "Mommy, Can I tell you a story? This is a ploy. Just do a little now. Yes, I'd love to hear a story. I put my chin up on his top bunk, and he looks right at me and begins. There once was a bright, beautiful, and brave mommy. And every day she filled up her children with stories, which filled them up with love. But I guess you're not surprised, because that's just the kind of mommy she is. Bright, beautiful, and brave. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming tonight, and I will turn it back over to the Eastmans. I've gotten better at being able to read okay, no, I'm not actually a quick reader. I'm actually a pretty slow reader, and I remember every single thing I read. So I am not the kind who's gonna like plow through a novel and then read it again in 3 weeks having forgotten everything, because first of all, it would take me like a long time to read. I love audiobooks, I have to say. But I've gotten better and better at reading as I've gone, and as I continue to practice, right? But as a kid, it was just, it was rough. So, and storytelling, I didn't know about storytelling until I was in college, and my little brother's class went to the Timpanogos Storytelling Festival, and they didn't have enough adults to chaperone. So I said, well, I'll go. That sounds interesting. I could go. So even though I didn't read, I've always loved to write. Since the time my teacher showed me that letters went together to make words, I was hooked. I was like, oh, this is so amazing. I couldn't believe it. And then I saw this storytelling, and people are telling stories and they're interacting with an audience. And I was like, this is for me, because I love writing stories and I love people. I am not the typical writer who holds up and just writes. Yeah, no, I'm not like that at all. And so this was a great way for me to do something that I loved, which was writing and creating stories, but also with people. So that's how I kind of discovered storytelling. And maybe the whole audio, like listening thing, had something to do with it. Yeah. Yeah. And do you want to know a little bit about, so the stories are true. With my great-great-grandmother's story and my great-great-great-grandparents, Mandy and Robert and Martha. So Mandy and Robert's courtship is true. That all happened, and it's in their journal kind of thing that I found. And Martha did learn how to play piano on a board, on a box, right? She practiced like that. I knew that Mandy sang, and I know because there's this really beautiful, beautiful scene at the very end of her life history where she taught all of the children in the community to sing, and she died pretty young. She was only 54. Mm-hmm. And at her funeral, all of the children gathered at the Sweeten home and followed the casket carrying bunches of flowers because they loved her so much. Mm-hmm. So I knew that about her. And so I tried to stay really true to who they were. And but I did have to do some connecting of the dots, right? Mm-hmm. How would she learn piano on a box? How did she learn how to ride a horse? Like all of those things I kind of connected the dots to. So it's partially fictionized, but as true as I could possibly make it to who they were and the time period. Does that make sense? Yeah, because, you know, back then there were just like little paragraphs. Like, that I'm like, what? She learned how to play piano on a box? I have 6 children and 5 of them have gone through piano lessons. And I know how hard it is. How in the world did she learn how to play it on a board? Like, that is tough. That is amazing, right? Yeah. But I love her so. So I wanted to tell a story about her, right? Yeah. And yes, we really did have 960 cookies. That really actually happened. It's not an exaggeration or anything. Like the whole cookie puzzle thing, all true. The whole bedtime routine thing, all true. The whole Beatles Shakespeare thing, all true. So, yeah, I didn't have to make up anything on those because that was me. So, yeah.
How about bedtime?
Bedtime? Yeah, totally true. Yeah.
What was the third one? Bright, Beautiful, and Brave, Special Kiss?
Special Kisses and a song.
And a song.
Yeah, they almost always chose Special Kisses and a Bright, Beautiful, and Brave story. But I always like to have a choice. Because then they feel like they're in charge. Right? And Joey really was the first one. This is Joey, by the way. He's grown up now. But he really was the one with Special Kisses. And I have it written in my journal that at 6 years old, he was like, I don't like a night kiss. I was like, that is, you are 6. That's ridiculous. What 6-year-old doesn't want? Yeah. So, yeah. Any other questions?
I might just say that you told about chocolate chip oatmeal cookies.
Yes.
And Annie made some of those in the other room.
And you didn't even know? That's so awesome.
So y'all have to try one.
For one all night.
Yes, we have oatmeal chocolate chip cookies, but not 10 dozen of them, so you're safe.
Hey, let's have a final time.
And thank you so much, Steffani. Thank you to all of you. Again, we want to thank the Eastmans. We thank all of our hosts, and so we thank the, can we applaud?